So I'll just set some context. Why I'm giving this talk is basically I've come to the conclusion that we have our functional literacy is declining as people because we're experiencing a turn of age type thing, and I'll talk about that in the talk. I'm just prefacing it, but I feel that everything that we know to have worked in our education system will no longer work, already is beginning to fray at the edges and does not work. That's why an experiment like Ashoka works, because it's teaching to a new thought process, and that needs to continue. And so my project here is, my overall thesis is that we have, and I'm not covering this in today's talk, I'm just giving you my overall thesis, that our sense of who we are as a species is highly limited. We think of ourselves as Homo sapiens, as a biological being, but we're not actually a biological species. We're a completely different kind of species. And that sounds like sci-fi, but I have logical reasons to explain that, and I'll cover some of that in the talk. So our problem is that we're using a framework that is incorrect, incomplete, and inconsistent with the world we find ourselves in. And so my overall thesis, I don't know, in 5 years or 10 years, I'll build out the whole thing into something that's workable, is that I think we need to just redo our sense of who we are as a species and why we work. I'll illustrate, and I haven't begun the talk yet, but I'll give you an example. What does it mean to be a species? We think our biology makes us a species, right? That's true for most animal species, but not mammals. And for many other animal species also, it's not quite true. And the reason for that is that some animal species are superorganisms. They're not an individual ant is not just an individual ant. There could be ants with different shapes that belong to the same species. Hi, and right, so they are a superorganism. There are symbiotic species. For example, ants that farm fungi are a superorganism where it's just two different species that are symbiotically linked together and form one cohesive, singular organism. We are a lot more complex as a species. We are definitely not a biological. If you take my 23andMe DNA thing and you say this is all me, you're missing out the full spectrum by a wide margin of who we are as a species. We're not just our DNA, all right? Begin with something as simple as the bacteria that live on our skin, in our gut, and our knees, and our hair, our teeth. They form a very important part of who we are. Our moods, our regulation of our bodily structures. So they're as much a part of us as we are. But then you look at, some of you, does everyone drink milk? The fact that you can digest milk is a biological adaptation. It allowed you and I to actually exist because previously humans, like every other mammal, weans off milk. But now you're drinking milk from another species, and that has given us more survivability. And now we're essentially now we have multiple species involved in one organism. And the reason Indians think the cow is mother, because we are successful because that concentrated energy intake from milk and curd and paneer and everything else, cheese, allows us to be successful. It has allowed the Yamnaya people to, within 100, 200 years, replace the entire 90% of the European population. Two animals, cow and horse. And so would you say that they're pure human versus the other humans that were also human looking? No, they're not pure human. They're part human, part horse. Because they're horse riding, milk swigging humans. So to limit the species to just your 23andMe DNA thing is a ridiculous thing. And now I'm just talking biology. Now if you add to that the other complications, you realize that our sense of a species is so limited that it's laughable. So that's my overall longer term project, that I think that it's an interdisciplinary thought, and that's the reason it needs to be just said by someone from outside. And I'm just decided it's me who needs to do it. Today's talk is a piece in that overall jigsaw, where one part of the chain is broken, and I'm here to talk about that. So are we ready to roll? Ready to roll. Okay, good. All right, good. So this talk is called New Literacies in the Age of Intelligence. Let me preface that by a little bit of self-introduction. Some of you are my students, you already know me. If you can't read it, don't worry. But essentially, all I want to say is that I've been in the corporate learning academic field for 20 years. Alongside my work, I've been teaching. I run an institute. I'm a board member of another institute. I teach at several institutes, including this finest institution, and at IIM Ahmedabad. I've been around the academic world. I've been in the learning world for about 20 years in the corporate side, and I have my own pedagogy, which is built into the SRL course that I teach, as you already know. But overall, my courses fall into 4 categories, and I'll hint at that when we come in. I have written several books, and I'll use one of those books to jump off into today's book. That was just a quick intro to give you a sense of the reason I'm addressing the academic fraternity here, as well as the students, of why there is a need for new literacies in the age of intelligence. First off, the obvious. What is the age of intelligence? It sounds like some hypeware, but it's not. Age of intelligence is not around the corner, it's here. We're just in a liminal stage where we are in the information age and in the age of intelligence, somewhere in the middle where there's a transition going on. I call it the age of destruction and distraction. I'll refer to that in a minute. So it's a transition period. But when we enter into the new age fully, it'll be the age of information, age of intelligence, because you will have access to ubiquitous, cheap, forever available intelligence on tap. Right? And that will change the dynamics of our society, and I'll cover that in the talk. Age of intelligence is basically having access to intelligence of all types, AI included, but all types, on tap, ultra cheap, all the time. If you see what happened, those of us, I actually grew up in a world before internet, right? The world before the internet and after the internet are 2 completely different worlds. They are no longer, they look physically the same, but the world operates very differently. Right? Your sense of who you are as a country, you can all name America's president, but maybe half of you can't tell me who India's president is. Why? Because we now live in a global culture. Everything that's happening in the world is known to us. All of that is thanks to the internet, right? So the information age lasted well, 30, 40, 50 years, it's done well. We're now going to transition into a completely different age. And so now there's going to be a need for literacy. Behind you, you're not going to see that with the lighting that we have in this room, but you have these cave paintings from about 15,000 BC, so about 17,000 years ago, right? We have the famous, this is from the press, this is the first printing press from 1450, the end of the medieval era and the beginning of the Renaissance. And therefore the industrial era is around the corner, just at the time of the printing press. You also have the Roman marketplace. This is a regular commerce marketplace from the Roman era. And then of course you also have the Pashupati seal from Indus Valley about 6,000 years ago, showing a seated meditating person, right? I'm going to call these 4 motifs into things. So the cave art, the printing press, the Roman marketplace, and the Pashupati seal. Right? I'm going to call those in. The reason I am giving this talk is about 2022, but it begins in 2017. I was running an AI startup. This is AI for documents. My students already know this. And I am a meditator. If you come to my evening class, I talk about meditation and philosophy. So my friend said, okay, all this is great, but how is it that on one hand you're automating the work and taking it away, and on the other hand you're saying, no, don't do anything, sit and meditate? What is the future of work? More importantly, what is the future of the human worker? Future of work to theek hai. And the future of the human worker, I gave a talk. That talk was well received. I gave 20 more talks. Those were recorded into a podcast series, and they said, ab itna bol hi diya to kitab hi likh do. So we wrote a book. We published with Oxford University Press, and that's the book. It's called Global Business in the Age of Destruction and Distraction. And destruction is everything you've been taught, everything we know for sure in the world around us is being destroyed and remade. But to bahar koi shanti nahi hai, everything is in chaos outside. And you might think, okay, at least I'm at peace. But we're not at peace because the same underlying problem, the same underlying drivers are also creating tremendous distraction. You are now competing for control of your brain and your emotions and your feelings with companies that are trillions of dollars in market capitalization. They know better than you how your attention works because they have invested into all the technology that knows how to keep us distracted and outraged and so on. That's why we have the phone, the ghost phone thing. That's why we have the people are willing to forego sex, forego food, forego anything, but phone nahi, phone or internet band nahi hona chahiye. Because we've got so used to this constant drip feed of distraction. And that is the age that we find ourselves in today. And today, both the talks today are emanating from this book and so on. This is going to be a conversation. So if anything attracts your attention and you want to talk about it, you can stop me. Anything you don't like it, you can raise your hand and talk about it as well. I want to talk to you about alien contact. This is from the movie Arrival. And this is when aliens arrive on the planet, and now they're essentially sending us information. They're addressing us with information, but we don't know the first thing about what they're saying. We can't talk to them because functionally, while we are able to read and write in English, we're illiterate to their ways. We're illiterate to what they're saying. We're illiterate to whatever cluster of ideas they want to talk to us about. And that's the theme of this movie, right? How do you make sense of the world and so on. And so here, of course, this is that famous scene. Imagine yourself similarly accosted by another alien who's talking to you. Can someone tell me what they're asking? This is, of course, famously a Klingon. And they're asking us some questions. Those words mean nothing to us, right? We're illiterate when it comes to these words. We're not stupid. We just don't understand what the heck is being said to us. Here, of course, what he's asking us is, do you speak Klingon? Which is the way to the bathroom? And we're going to do this, and then it's a very famous, in Klingon culture, it's a very famous famous saying that they say, when revenge is served cold, it is always very good. It's a famous Klingon saying in their culture. It's a very warrior culture. But the point is, of course, you get the feeling of being illiterate, right? You go to another city, another country, and it feels like a different place. You can't read their billboards. You don't know what they're saying. And even though you're very articulate in your ways, you don't understand what they're saying, right? And the claim I'm about to make is that this happens all the time, which is throughout human history. Technology revolutions. So you look at the Bronze Age, Copper Age, Stone Age, they're all technologies that we're talking about. The wheel, the horse, the cow, the Industrial Revolution, the Information Age, the Age of Intelligence, they're all technological innovations that create these widespread and continuous periods of functional illiteracy. You may know everything about the world and how it operates before this age has changed. But as soon as the age changes, you're functionally illiterate. Because now everything's alien to you. Nothing seems to compute. Nothing makes sense. It's just random Klingon words for all. So when writing first emerged, for example, cultures that were oral transmission, like Indian culture is oral transmission, we don't know what's being written. We don't know how it's being transmitted. Even in Greece, I think was it Aristotle who did not like writing because he said it makes your thinking poorer quality. It makes your remembering memory poorer quality. And there's a resistance to the act of writing. But here we are, we read and write, all of us, and we think our only benchmark of literacy is reading, writing, and arithmetic, the 3 R's of literacy. Padhe likhe hain. But there have been these periods when you switched over from oral tradition where memorization of the stories, memorization of the cadence, the mantra, the meter, the chanda, all of those mattered. And suddenly now you need to write. And if you see how even Indian tradition, if you see Sanskrit verses, the reason you can't read Sanskrit verses like they're English or Hindi is because they're poetry, not prose. You're able to memorize them if you remember the meter. right? Cadence unki aani chahiye. But we don't. We read them because we're not used to the cadence. But when you sing it with cadence, you memorize it easier. It's easier to understand and parse out. So essentially, now that we're in an age when AI is going to transform our world, it already is transforming our world, we are going to need new forms of literacy. Because we're going to find ourselves, and I will prove it to you, and hopefully in today's talk, that we're going to be functionally illiterate. We already are experiencing that because we're in a transition stage. Okay, hold on. This slide should have gone. Okay, this has. Okay, we're going to skip. Okay, now the reason I was talking to you about the new sense of what it means to be a species is we're not a biological species. We're a mix of biology, culture, and technology. I'll prove it to you. Do you actually eat raw food? Does anyone not eat cooked food? You can't really do well because we don't have the digestive capacity. We don't actually chew the cud. We don't have 4 stomachs to process the food. We don't do any of that. We're not designed for raw food. Does anyone disagree with that? We're designed to have cooked, pre-digested food. Essentially, we've outsourced our digestion to fire. What is fire? Fire is technology. But how do you learn to control fire? Because otherwise you'll burn yourself. That's culture. What do you do when you sit around the fire? You tell stories, also culture. And this precedes us as Homo sapiens. Australopithecus were also working with fire. We're also probably sitting around telling stories in their guttural voices or whatever the thing is, right? The point is we're successful and who we are, not because we're a purely biological species. We're a weaker ape than the apes that exist. We have smaller brains than the larger Neanderthals, right? We're not the strongest, we're not the biggest brained, but we're different. We're different because we have other things that make us who we are, complete. We're a mix of biology, culture, and technology, but there's a problem in that. The problem there is that they move at different time scales. How frequently is your biology changing? Your individual biology. Your gene expression, not too frequently and certainly not a lot, certainly not in this lifetime, right? And so biology changes at a very slow, glacial, very slow pace. Technology, on the other hand, changing at an exponential pace. So what is the problem? How are we going to adjust to all this technology? The buffer, the intermediating system for us is culture. How we learn how to use the wheel, how do we learn how to handle fire, how we learn how to communicate. You and I have not negotiated words before. You've never seen me before. Yet when I say something, you're able to understand it. Because we have a cultural connection. The words have not been negotiated dynamically. We already agree to the words and their rough meanings. And so culture is the mediating thing. It's supposed to buffer us. But the problem right now that we're facing is what Alvin Toffler called in the early 70s, future shock, which is essentially we're now in a place where technological change is exponential, and now we're in a state of shock. Nothing is familiar anymore. Nothing is familiar. Everything is changing. And now we're in a state of shock. We can't handle or digest any of this stuff. And you think this is happening now? It was happening in the 70s when Alvin Toffler wrote his books. Because this is a continuous process. It didn't just wake up one day and said, "Chalo, aaj technology banate hain." So what's happening is our biology is working at a very slow time scale. One gene mutation every 40,000 years or so. Our technology is changing at a very fast pace, exponential and faster. The only buffer we have is culture. And now the problem is we need to absorb all the technology. And the lack of literacy is this lack of cultural adaptation. Right? So that's what I mean by literacy, which is the cultural adaptation to the world that technology is creating. Not how to handle the technology, and I'll come to that in a few slides. I'm going to pause here and switch over to this. Anyway, I'm going to pause here after this slide. So in the medieval period, right? In the medieval period, it wasn't that there wasn't global trade. Global trade has been around forever. At the Bronze Age, people were trading bauxite to make bronze. And so we've been a global society for as long as, and from before we know, from before we've had history. So it isn't that they invented trade. So medieval societies were also good, affluent societies, but they were craft-oriented societies. You could work your little craft and guilds, and Mr. Smith and his son, also young Mr. Smith, were doing smithy, iron work. Mr. Cooper were doing copper work. Mr. Whoever does the hat work did the hat work. The carpenter did carpenter. Mr. Taylor was a tailor. Mr. Thatcher did roof thatching, right? These crafts were family crafts and small scale, and you learnt them, and that's how life was for thousands of years. And suddenly that system, that way of life was upturned when the machine came around. Same things are going to happen right now, are beginning to happen right now, as AI is reshaping our world. Right? But this pattern is not new, and that's what I want to say. Whatever I'm about to say to you, and I will prove to you, is not stuff that I've made up or that's new and we need to imagine an answer to it overnight. It's been around ever since we've been around, because again, we're not just a biological species, and technology has its own momentum. I'm going to pause with this word on the screen. Any questions or reactions, or what feelings come to your mind? I covered a lot of distance, so I'm going to let it sink in, so to speak. Anushka. Are you stunned, shocked, or just bewildered at what the heck happened here?
I think a mixture of that.
What part made sense?
It's making sense. I'm trusting it as you. It's certainly.
Roshan.
It's definitely something we don't talk about when we are talking about the literacy part of things. And this is like a pattern interrupt, but those other slides make sense.
Right?
So it's like what true education means, like the ultimate goal of education.
Yeah.
That now.
Isn't that the ultimate goal of education, to prepare ourselves for society as it's turning around? If our only benchmark was reading, writing, and arithmetic, I think we should shut down all colleges, because clearly AI has outpaced us from GPT 3.5 onwards. It does better reading, writing, and arithmetic than we can. So why the heck should we even teach? If that were only benchmark, our only benchmark for education. But no, it's to prepare ourselves for the society that's around to come. And that's the reason we have a functional literacy problem.
I was wondering the age that you're mentioning that we're entering, right? You talked about the 1970s example, right? So are you saying that this change is going to come like har 10 saal baad, or what we're going to experience right now is something really exponential which we haven't seen over the past 30-40 years?
It's been exponential for the last 200-300 years, basically. It's been continuously different, drastically and dramatically. And the information age came around in the early 70s onwards. That was dramatically different from the age before it. And now we're entering a stage where it'll be even more dramatically different. Before that, it was electricity. Before that, it was trains. And I'll end with trains, this entire talk with trains, for a fun reason. But I've presented, every one of those slides could have been a talk by itself. So I recognize that I'm covering a lot of distance in a short period of time. So I want to see if I need to catch up some people that I've lost along the way. Everyone's tracking? It's a lot to cover, but we'll keep pace. All right. पढ़ पोथी पढ़ पढ़ जगमुआ पंडित भय न कोय ढाई आखर प्रेम का पढ़े सो पंडित हो. On literacy, Sant Kabir Das in the 15th century said this, which is the world has died just reading book after book. No one's become wise. Right? But only if you learned the 2.5 letter word of love, prem, you have become wise. What else is there to know but to love? So, true literacy isn't about decoding symbols. Words are symbols, letters and alphabets are symbols, emojis or otherwise, right? But they're symbols. Decoding symbols is not true literacy. So when we talk about literacy in the age of intelligence, we're not talking about technological, do you know AI, can you code, can you write a prompt? No, it's about fundamental human connection. Have we learned to connect? Have we learned to connect the dots, but also connect with people, connect with ourselves and meaning and purpose? Have we learned to connect with each other and value what we value as a society and what we create together as a society? And yes, how we connect to technology. And so the central word in all of this is connection. And so those literacies are about connecting. Before the advent of domestication and machines and so on, humans would probably do a lot of heavy lifting. But then we domesticated animals, and then we could ride horses, right? And now a fast runner is outpaced by a horse rider, an ordinary horse rider, right? That's the problem. Because previously the skill was how do you run, how do you keep your shoes or whatever, your feet intact or whatever, and now you're no longer doing that, you're doing something completely different. You're learning to ride horses. Literacy has changed, the meaning has changed. You now need to connect with your horse, right, as one creature. That's why the centaur myth came around, part human, part horse, because you're one with your horse, right? Connecting is the essential act of learning. Connecting ideas, connecting principles, connecting with each other. And so we're no longer heavy lifting. We're also not going to do any heavy computation. Does anyone think that they are going to enter the world and be asked to summarize documents as a career level? That's not happening anytime soon, right? It's gone. There were careers during my time when all you did was analyst kiri, which was you analyzed things and you made presentations. There's no longer a career option, unfortunately. Right? Yes?
So there are a lot of people still doing heavy lifting. So what do you think about that?
They're doing heavy lifting because it's cheaper to find people than put machine in there. Now, do you want to be cheaper than machine? They're not literate in that sense, right? And we want to get to a place where they don't have to do heavy lifting. So we're going to have to create a different kind of society. Same with computation. Why should we have people read pages after pages when AI can do that for us right now? Why should those careers exist? Shouldn't. Because they're obviously going to be worse than machines. Cheaper maybe, but not scalable. So what are humans going to do? Why are you entering the workforce now? How are you going to survive in this world where machines are better than you on every aspect possible? Because you can connect. And those are the new literacies. Those new literacies, going back to a Vitruvian man, are 4 S's. Social literacy, connecting people to people. The fact that you can connect heart to heart with people, build relationship and trust, is going to be an essential skill. How do we connect with people? And I'll prove to you by the end, hopefully, that we have become functionally illiterate in this. हमें बात करने की कला नहीं आती है. We don't know how to connect with each other and contact each other. So social literacy is the first one. The second one is spiritual literacy. Connecting to purpose and meaning. Finding that North Star, finding your why, finding your source of energy is a very important skill that you'll have, because you as a leader, you'll be asked to connect your organization to its purpose. Because why else will people show up to work? Why can corporate billionaire titans say to you, no, you must work 70 hours a week or 90 hours a week, bhai isse kam nahi chalega. And everyone laughs at that because no one can imagine a world where you're being asked to work 70 hours. And yet people work 70 hours because they're driven. It's not a failure to direct, it is a failure to inspire. And you as leaders, your job is going to be connecting people with purpose and meaning to inspire. That's spiritual literacy. The third is, of course, my sales pitch for my course itself, which is sales. Connecting people to value. Influencing people, understanding what the other person wants, telling them stories, connecting and making sense of why working with your ideas, your product, your service is the right thing to do. That's sales. You can call it service as well, but sales, because that's the course I teach. And finally, yes, connecting with technology, which in the age of intelligence is going to be software, but not coding. Just the idea of connecting with technology. I remember about a few years ago, was it under 10 years ago, people were laughing, right, in India saying, "Arey, we have this mobile payment thing, our people don't even, they're not banked. This thing will never work. This poor illiterate person will not be able to use a phone to make a payment. All of your ideas are stupid." But guess what? Guess what? Everyone's got phones. Everyone knows how to use those phones. You have enough basic literacy to scan a QR code and make a payment. Come on. It's happened. How has it happened? Because we all learned how to make software work for us. Right? Even the grandmom can now do video call with students, with the grandkids. Right? You would think inko computer seekhne ki classes, you'd have computer classes earlier. Did any of your grandmoms actually do computer classes to learn how to use the phone? No. Software learned how to work with us. How did software learn how to work with us? Because people learned how to work with software. People that built the software figured out how to make it easy to use. Right? And so having this intuitive grasp of what technology is and how to make it work is an essential literacy. So my mnemonic, and I'm wrapping this section of the talk so far, we'll move to now more detail. My mnemonic for you is, it used to be that the 3 R's of literacy were reading, writing, and arithmetic. That's the formulation, even though 2 of those don't begin with R, but that's not the point. It was always called the 3 R's, reading, writing, and arithmetic. Now I say that there are 4 S's of literacy, which is social, spiritual, sales, and software. Those are the 4 literacies that we'll need to have. And now I'm going to prove to you right now through those examples that I'm about to give you. I'm going to pause. Yes?
The last 2 lessons, I get how you can teach them, but the first 2 ones, is there any way that, how do you teach someone or tell them that this is how you go about connecting to people?
You have to be there, Anushka. If you did the SRL course, what we teach is social and sales. Right? The first part of that is rapport building, connecting with people, building empathy, growing the size of our ears in a way that we're able to hear things they say, but also read between the lines. All of that is social skills, essential to the act of being human. Our entire brain, this half of the brain, is designed for that. We don't use it. Social. We can't teach it. You guys, you want to do your Pastor Bajinder thing? Pastor Bajinder, for those who don't know, is I'll call people from the audience and they will say, my sister couldn't see earlier, but now she can see. You've seen the meme. Oh, dekh sakti hai. So now, would you please sing to her and tell her that you can see?
Then of course we had people who were like totally introverts, wouldn't know how to talk to people, but after the course we learned a framework which is Chris Ford. So using that framework we can rapport with basically anyone. Like whenever I'm approaching anyone, I'll go towards them and we'll be thinking in terms of that framework, not very just instinctively. So first I need to ask about this and then this and this and this. So that rapport building framework is very useful and that is a good starting point.
Thank you, Pastor Bajinder. So, you want to say anything? Great, Tejas.
So, as Professor said, that's what we do in the course. So, the course is about sales, but for sales, you first need to know how to connect to people. And we use these certain frameworks that, as Roshan mentioned, the Test-Code framework, and many other frameworks to articulate better, to convey a point better. Let's say I'm saying something, but you can't even understand that, and I'm saying it in a way that you're able to understand it, but like it doesn't, you don't feel that, oh, I even need to know that, or like I'm not able to connect to you. I'm just saying something, but like you don't even want to hear that. So that's what we learn. Okay, if the two of us are talking, what I'm saying, how do you get that? How can I say that you say, oh, like this person is right, or this is actually something that I need to hear, or this is actually something that I want to know. That's how you connect to people. That's how you talk.
Yeah.
And through that you do sales.
It is teachable. In fact, because it's a human skill, it has always been taught. You always learn from the elders. That's the whole point of building. Why is this a liberal arts program to begin with, right? Because you want people to have the perspective. You want the people to have the ability to connect ideas and with people and so on. This Vitruvian man and this, it's no surprise that we're here in this place having this conversation, because that's the central thesis that Ashoka has been built on as well. How do you teach spiritual? I teach spiritual, so come to the 6 o'clock, 6:30 and I'll teach you spiritual. You can't teach it, it must be taught. And that's why I have examples from all these places. That is an objection saying, how do you do it? 15,000 years ago, we were doing these cave paintings where we were coming together and doing the hunt, right? This is from French caves 17,000 years ago, and we were doing group work, right? We learned how to do it because that's the only way we could have survived as a species. The Pashupati seal, right? From we know how to do spiritual work and teach it, because I can do that posture even now. I know exactly what he's doing and why. You can do it, right? And that's the point. It has been taught to us. It is teachable. It is learnable. It just hasn't been done now because our narrow definition of literacy limited ourselves to reading, writing, and arithmetic, because we were creating clerical staff, essentially cogs in this institutional organizational machine. But now we need more than that. You're now functionally illiterate if all you know is how to read, write, and do math. Okay, moving right along. It is no insult to call someone an idiot, because the ancient Greeks had a concept called idiotes, which is not originally an insult, but it's a term for someone who's somewhat disconnected from civic participation. Apni dekh rahe hain. And so that person, he said, look, we want people to be involved in society. We want you to participate. And someone who didn't participate was an idiot. It wasn't a derogatory thing then. That's what you would call if you stayed out of civic engagement. And so social literacy, the ability to connect meaningfully with others, has been essential, right? We saw that. And so this concept of connecting with people and society has always been around. Someone who couldn't connect was called an idiot in Greek. Sounds nicer, but it's the same word, right? Because we live in a functioning society. No man is an island. And if you cannot connect with people, then how are you actually participating in this dance of society? Connecting with people individually, but also collectively, as part of a civic society. And that's why when there are protests on campus are important simply for the reason that you're learning how to group together, you're learning politics. And politics was seen as a bad thing, but it's a great thing to learn on campus. Where else are you going to go learn this stuff, right? Because you learn how to organize, you learn how to prioritize, you learn how to trade and exchange values. I want this, you want this, acha theek hai, itna karte hain, this will agree to this. You need to learn that skill. You don't just need to learn that skill, but you certainly need to learn that skill. Because if you don't, you'll become which is the question that she'd asked me, if you're just an engineering type guy, which I certainly am, what happens is you only know how to talk to machine. So on 4 axes, I'm high IQ and smart only on one axis. On all the other axes, I'm a
Idiot.
idiotis. That's hardly great. And so if you see the original driver for why Ashoka was set up, it was set up by engineers. Why? Because we realize we're idiots. We're 3/4 idiots. 1/4 very smart. We said that's hardly great. You gotta be full smart, right? Not idiot. And that's why this is very important. I'm gonna pause here and see if this is making sense, or has anyone been offended by my use of the word idiot? Pause. Reflection time. थोड़ा break लेंगे. Ma'am, you haven't spoken, but you're smiling, so I'll ask you.
So I've been thinking about everything that you have said in the session, and I think I would like to use the word relief. Like, I feel relief that there are other people who feel the same way about the revolution that we are going through right now, like AI. I am from the PR and comms team, by the way, and we have to kind of create a lot of content. And as I think AI has taken that spot, but I really, as a content writer, I've been working in content for the past 7-8 years. When AI generates some content, I think what it lacks is connection, as you said. The text comes across as really robotic and all, and that's where I think having social literacy, spiritual literacy, and all these things that you mentioned, I think that's important. And I don't think that can be taught to AI. AI can over time develop all of that, and it can have a lot of technical knowledge about that, but I think that human touch that we can give as human beings, I think that is important. So I would like to say that abhi tak ke session mein, whatever you have said, this is what I've realized, that human touch is and is always going to be important, no matter how much technology develops further. So that's what I've been thinking till now.
Yeah. That's great. You have something to say? Alright. Anybody else have something to say? Nikalo abhi.
I have been thinking one thought. So you mentioned those three connections. I see कि those three are connected, but not the technology one. So I don't understand that कि how it connects to others also.
So remember I said biology, culture, and technology. Those other three are culture. Connecting to people, connecting to meaning and purpose, connecting to value is cultural. But connecting to technology is the fourth part, which is obviously because we're also doing all of this because technology is moving so fast. We have to keep pace with it. See, the thing is, technology has outpaced our comprehension. We don't know how technology works. This is quite literally true for AI that is around. Even the people who made it don't know how it works anymore. So it has crossed comprehension. And then it limits our ability to put it to work. And I'll talk about that in a couple of other examples when this has happened in the past. I have a
Different aspect.
Yeah, no, it's runaway technology. It's runaway power. We don't know how it works, but it works, and now we don't know what to do with it. We don't know how to master it. And so the mnemonic for that, remind me, is this. At the end of this talk, if I do this, then you'll have understood what this means. It is runaway power. All right, no more idiotes. All right, so now these are going to be impossible to read. I'm going to zoom in. I'll give you examples of how in the medieval period, in social literacy, things changed completely. And this is continuously true all the time. Basically, you were in the medieval period living in the village. So the hobbits in the Shire, for example, were just living in the Shire. They didn't travel outside. They didn't seek out adventure. Nothing was happening. They were happy having their 4 meals a day. Take 11 says, take lunch, take after that, take dinner. They were happy doing that. And that's the world that they lived in the medieval period. For thousands of years, they were in this state. generation after generation. And suddenly, within a couple of generations, we moved to the industrial age where now instead of tightly knit villages where everyone knew everyone, who knew who was up or down, and so on, you had to go to a city. And you see that happening even in India, right? The urban infrastructure is very different. You don't know which class somebody is in. You don't know if they're up or down. There's no social order. There's no ties with anyone. You don't know anyone. You don't know who to reach for help. You're just by yourself. So entire social fabric was pulled out in that period when urbanization resulted from the industrialization. The social hierarchies were set. Surely not all good, obviously, because when they're set, they're rigid. And when they're rigid, they're now a straitjacket and it holds the society back from innovating. Hello. What's up? This is testimonial number 1. ASP 25, so graduating this year. All right.
Next year.
25 चल रहा है यार.
26, ASP.
Oh, you're 26, that's सब ठीक. Okay, so coming back. You were saying something? No, okay. So what happened with the breaking apart of society is the feudal structures were very well known and so on. But now you're in the no class system. Now money is the only thing that you have. Previously you had money, culture, or rank, or family. Things that you could be elite on. But now it's only money. Because that's the only thing that you could actually show. And which is why you see a lot of new immigrants have money culture. Those of you who are from Delhi know this, that Delhi is very money culture. Because Delhi is the city of immigrants. Right? तो और कुछ है नहीं, पैसे दिखाते हैं, शोषा. Because what else do you show? You can't show your culture, your taste. Because no one gives two words about your case. We haven't developed that as a culture. Right? But older cultures, you go to an older, more stable culture that has been rich for longer, they begin to acquire taste. You demonstrate your eliteness through better taste, more nuanced taste. Not through your wealth, it's considered very base. पैसा दिखा रहा है, how stupid. You hide your money, you show your taste. But that, when the switchover happened from the medieval to industrial age, suddenly money was the taste, right? And then in communication itself, face-to-face, communicating, Upanishads, come sit near, let me talk to you. Suddenly you could write stuff and meme and blog, and you're now Martin Luther, and writing those little edicts on a piece of paper, someone's printing it, and now you're a rock star of the medieval age. Essentially, your words were printed and shopped all around. They haven't met you personally, but they've been touched by your words. Because now there's a printing press, right? And where you gathered used to be the church, used to be the halls, nearby places, right? Religious community places. But now you're in the city, you don't know what church to go to. You could go to a church, but the pub is a better place, the coffee shop is a better place. And so the London coffee shop is born. The new kind of culture. Because everyone's a stranger. You got to mix somewhere. You either go to the drinking hall or the coffee hall, which is for the non-drinkers, the same deal. You just sit and talk with friends, and amazing things come out. The London boards came out of it. The insurance market came out of it. The East India Company came out of it. The coffee culture became the dominant driver of the culture. How did it come to be? Again, this is the urbanization led to it. All of it comes from industrialization. I hope I've made this point clear, that the previous literacy was completely lost and a new kind of literacy was required. And now I come to you with a fun example from, have you seen this amazing movie by Shatranj Ray, Shatranj Ki Khiladi? If you have not seen it, hello and welcome. You are missing an amazing movie. It's based on a short story by Munshi Premchand, called Shatranj Ki Khiladi, eponymously. And it's a story, it's a chef's kiss. What a beautifully done movie, you should see it. I'll show you a snippet of it. But essentially it shows a change of an age. See, the Mughal Raj had been around for 100+ years, and the offshoots, the far offshoots of the Mughal Raj were in peace. They had become decadent centers of culture. Decadent centers of culture where money and taste and leisure, a man of leisure, is considered. That society is being upturned by the arrival of the British industrial machine. Quite literally, as you will see, but also quite metaphorically. And this change is being documented through the story of the two chess players who are affluent, Mirza and Mir, very affluent, rich people with no other, they have nothing to do because they're rich. Come on. Tasty taste हमारे पास. They're Lucknow people, so they're like extra taste, extra nazakat, extra everything, and they're chess players. They love chess so much that they love it more than they love their wives, which is a point that comes somewhere in the movie as well. And they don't understand the politics. They certainly don't understand what the heck has hit them. And so they have escaped to a rural village, away from their wives, away from the political upheaval that's happening, and Wajid Ali Shah being kicked out, and so on. It's a very fun movie, you should watch it. But it signals a change of stage. And so I'm going to put this video on just for fun. You should watch this movie. Literally, it's a brilliant movie. I've cut the audio because what the heck. Just watch these guys. Of course, you know this guy. This is Said Jafri and Sanjeev Kumar. And masterclass. These guys are the previously named chess players. So watch what's going on. The year is 1856 and 7. So naam suna hoga aapne. You know what's about to happen after this. But here now, the English army has invaded Awadh. I was in Awadh, literally this place, I was passing through it on a train, which fact will become obvious in about 1 minute, that I was passing through that about 1 day ago. They're showing people of great taste, great success, suddenly finding themselves completely at odds. They have become functionally illiterate. They're obviously men of great taste and wealth, very literate in the arts, in the idiom of the times that no longer exist. Wajid Ali Shah is shown as a debauch, the Nawab of Awadh in Lucknow. He's shown as a debauch, a role masterfully played by our friend Gabbar Singh, Amjad Khan. He plays this, he is a dancing, drinking, like complete debauched guy. And he is essentially, he's been sent a writ by the British saying, sign this or else. So of course he signs it because it's what one does. And so these chess players have just had a fight previous to this. This is the last scene in the movie, by the way. But I want you to watch this and come to the last line, which is happening in 30 seconds. Okay, hold on, okay, right here. So hold on, I'm going to go back and then play. Alright, chacha. Okay, here. Arey, no, kebabs are already cold. Okay. Arey, no, wait, 1 second. I'm going to drag this because I don't want, oh, come on. Sorry, I'm going to have to redo this. Come on, man. Okay, we'll let this play out.
You can escape the presentation.
I'll escape it and play it. Okay, come on. Or not. Okay, forget it. No? Okay, we'll let this play out. I'll let it play out and I'll talk some more. But anyway, essentially they're hiding from their wives. They're hiding from their society because then their hideout is, of course, this village, but also their game. So what they're going to talk, they've just had a fight, they've tried to shoot each other, but they're best buddies. And that's the thing that they're ending with. So what Sanjeev Kumar says is, शाम को घर जाते हैं because अंधेरे में मुंह छुपाने का भी प्रबंध रहता है. But the expression that they're carrying is an expression of having given up. They have now become completely illiterate in this world that they are now entering. Look at this. What a Okay, now this is important. He's saying, let's play a quick game. Jaldi jaldi khelte hain. Jaldi jaldi? They're from Lucknow. No one plays chess quickly or anything quickly in Lucknow. Okay. The train has not yet arrived in Awadh. This is 1856-57. The train is about to hit Lucknow in about 10 years from now, but it has come to India. The Bombay to Thane train has already come. So the arrival of the British machine, the industrial age having arrived into India, has changed the dynamics, where essentially the craft work of India is going to be uprooted, where the fine muslin and the chicken work that's being done is going to be replaced by machine produced cloth bought from the industrialized Britain, sold into India. So the impoverishment of India is about to happen in the years to follow. Essentially, the industrial age has arrived in medieval age India. And this particular scene captures that beautifully, because now everything that worked in the medieval period no longer works. All that taste, all that other stuff, everything is gone. And that is a sense of literacy gone into functional illiteracy. Spiritual illiteracy as well. If you look at the medieval period to industrial period, the worldview was that there was a cosmology and we knew how the world worked. But then rationalism, because the thinking of the machine, the idiom of the machine, everything is clockwork. So Rene Descartes comes around, rationalism comes around, enlightenment comes around, and essentially it changes our worldview completely. We knew how the world worked before that. And we have a completely different way of understanding the world. Our time was cyclical in rhythm with nature, and now time is linear and non-stop and going forever, and so on. The purpose, why we exist, how we manage our energy. We used to sleep when it was dark, we used to wake up when it was bright in the morning. We were in sync with our inner and outer schedule. No more. All of that changed. The industrial age changed the dynamics. How we manage our purpose and meaning and our own energy levels changed. And so anyone who couldn't handle this world has become now illiterate. So I hope you're getting the idea that the change of age immediately creates a cascading illiteracy through the society. And that brings us to the story of Frankenstein, where Frankenstein's monster story isn't just a story about Frankenstein's monster. This is around the time Galvani's experiments with frogs had been going around. Galvani, this is before electricity. But electricity had been invented but not mechanized by this time. This is about 100 years from the time Tesla and Edison were building electrical power plants, just before that. And so what's happening is this guy Galvani is going around with dissected frogs in his traveling roadshow, similar to me doing a talk here. He's doing a traveling roadshow with frogs and dead bodies and cadavers, and he's doing electricity and a dead frog. He's able to move its arms and legs with electricity. And that captures the imagination, and that leads to writing the story. Mary Shelley writes the story of Frankenstein's monster, which is a story about essentially a monster that has agency but no purpose, right? It has capability to move but no reason to move. It has essentially no spiritual literacy. It is a zombie-like monster with no purpose. It can move like us, but it has no reason to move. It is spiritually illiterate, the monster. And that is a comment on the times themselves, where the industrialization was leading to these thoughts that somehow we have killed God, as our friend Nietzsche said around the same time. God is dead and we have killed him. Because we have no need for God, we have no need for purpose. This world seems to work by itself and money is the only purpose. And that is a spiritually illiterate world. And so you're seeing that spiritual illiteracy is also all around. It's also that how we connected to value also changed. So we become illiterate in sales as well. I'm going to skip over because we're running out of time. And software literacy, our understanding of tools handwork, manual work was valued. Craft is handcraft and no longer valued because machine craft is all about running the machine. The cotton gin, the machine, right? And so what happened was old craft begins to die and becomes a sideshow, something that you just have for antique reasons, right? And all the things that generation after generation of hard-won knowledge about how to dye paper cloth, how to print, how to make this and that, how to mill the hats, all of that is lost because essentially that craft no longer has takers. And all of that literacy, years of learning, no longer needed, seeming completely redundant. This also happened a few years ago. A friend of mine is an Aga Khan follower, and he talked about how within his community, the Muslim community of North India especially, they all were, the language of instruction was Urdu. It sounds the same as Hindi, so no difference, but the script that you learned how to write in was Urdu. So some of your grandparents would have been taught how to read and write in Urdu, not in Gurmukhi or Hindi or English or whatever. Urdu was the medium of instruction. The problem was when the state changed its state language to Hindi, they realized they were completely illiterate. They couldn't read, they couldn't write, they couldn't get government jobs. Right? You can overnight become illiterate. That's the experience of being illiterate. And now I come to you with the story of Bhasmasura. What is the story of Bhasmasura? Bhasmasura is someone who, through penance, who tab karta hai. And he goes to Shivji and he says, Shivji says, okay, ask me for a boon. He says, anything I touch, this is the anti-Midas or anti-Midas as we say in India. Anything you touches becomes gold when Midas touches it. But when Bhasmasura touches it, exactly the opposite, it turns to ashes. He gets this amazing power to destroy, nuclear power. And so he destroys and acquires so much power as a result, but it's uncontrolled power. So what happens? He doesn't have a purpose, doesn't have a meaning, and now no longer is actually a good thing, a force for good in this world. So now the gods have to conspire to bring this dude back. So how do they do it? They go to Vishnu because Shiva has given this boon, he can't take it back, it's not how this thing works. So they go to Vishnu ji and he says, please kuch karo aap. So Vishnu ji devises a plan, he comes as Mohini. This all attractive dancer. They engage in a dance-off. So dance-offs were invented in the Indian tradition, not in Western movies. So they had a dance-off, dance competition karenge. And then of course she does this very nice dance move which ends with this. And she says, I can do that. He does the whole dance move, ends with this, and he's gone. The thing that you're seeing now, the fears about AI are exactly this. Ki AI bhi hai Bhasmasura hai. AI does not have any purpose. AI is like Frankenstein's monster and Bhasmasur rolled into one. Essentially, it does not have a meaning or a purpose, a denouement, an objective for living. But it's all powerful. Right? And it will burn through everything it touches. But the reason I tell you this story is, this is consistently always the case. Indian tradition is filled with stories. वो माता के अस्त्र शस्त्र क्यों होते हैं वो कहानी? If you hear all those कहानीज, why does she have all these अस्त्र शस्त्र? Because someone somewhere has given a boon and given unlimited powers to something. I think they're allegories or stories relating to the technological power that arrives with any new age. You can master bronze, you can rule the world. You can ride horses, you can rule the world. Every new power comes with it, of course with great responsibility, but also with great power but no purpose until it's contained and harnessed. And that's why the story of the mother goddess having to wield all these arms and destroy Mahishasur. Okay, untrammeled power. Mohini and Bhasmasur, untrammeled power. Hiranyakashipu and Narsimha, untrammeled power. Again, very good lawyers, Hiranyakashipu, as I said, but no one can kill me, nor man, nor God, nor inside, nor outside, not morning, not evening. Full good legal contract. So now you have to beat him with another extra legal thing, right? The point is, these are all stories of runaway power. You see the trend. Why are there so many stories of runaway power? Because this isn't the first time it's happening. We've always had runaway power that comes with every change of technological age. And that requires containing and repurposing. And that is spiritual literacy. Because without it, it will destroy everything. It does not have a purpose. And so with these stories, I've shown you a pattern. The pattern of a technological revolution creating new forms of illiteracy that must be overcome in order to fully master the technology. And so when I talk about the 4 literacies, I've already talked to you about this. Now I'd like to tell you that already we are functionally illiterate. Let's talk about social literacy. We're finding it hard to build authentic connection. Date पे भी जाओगे तो दोनों phone देख रहे हैं. क्यों हो रहा है? Because we just don't know how to connect. So tell me about yourself. We're like, whatever. The point is, we just don't know how to talk, right? There is a 85% of Gen Z's polled experience loneliness. Why? Right? We are unable to read emotional cues in increasingly virtual interactions. We don't know how someone's actually experiencing, what's going on in their mind, because we can't read them, right? And we don't know how to trust, therefore. Who do we trust? We just don't know that. So we are already functioning. If you disagree with any of those 4 assertions, you tell me, but I'm going to tell you that I think we're already functionally illiterate. For something as basic as social literacy, which is a basic human birthright. We're born with the prefrontal cortex, which is designed for social literacy. But we just don't know how to use that anymore. Spiritual literacy. एक अकेलापन, एक खालीपन आ गया. There's a feeling of emptiness, because even yesterday I was meeting this friend of mine who's a spiritual teacher. As you can tell, my friends are all spiritual teachers. So he shows me this phone. He says, this guy is an IAS, that other fellow is a minister in this state, and they all come to me for Gita instruction. But he says, itna sab hai, but kuch nahi hai. Because always the story pitched to them was, तुम लोग ना ग्रेजुएशन कर लो तो सब सेट हो जाएगा जी. Then they say you get a good job, सब सेट हो जाएगा जी. शादी कर लो, सब सेट हो जाएगा. बच्चे कर लो, सब सेट हो जाएगा. प्रमोशन करके इस लेवल तक पहुंचो, सेक्रेटरी लेवल तक पहुंचो, सब सेट हो जाएगा. And we've reached that, and we're like, but हमें तो अभी तक तो कुछ सेट नहीं हुआ. I'm not feeling a sense of fullness. I'm not feeling accomplished. I'm not feeling any joy. क्या बकवास है? Why is there a sense of emptiness? What is our purpose? We can see productivity metrics, see me at the 6:30 class, but we're not able to find our purpose. And what's that leading to is chronic exhaustion. People are burnt out. You look at burnout statistics, they're amazingly extant. Everywhere you see there's burnout. You can't pay people to get out of bed anymore because they're like, "Arey yaar, aaj phir office jana padega." It shouldn't be that way. We shouldn't have to have plutocrats telling you to work 70 hours. You just don't. I don't think he meant it that way, because I know him personally, but I think what he meant was, आपकी drive होनी चाहिए. But lack of drive is this. It's lack of spiritual literacy. We just don't have a purpose. Why the heck should I work to make you rich, Mr. Narayan Murthy? भाई तुम billionaire हो तो multi-billionaire हो जाओगे. But what difference does it make to me? Why should I work to do it? So why do it? With your generation, what I'm hearing from my friends who are employing your generation is exactly this. बच्चे आते हैं, उनको पर्पस चाहिए, मीनिंग चाहिए. 1-2 साल में थकने लगते हैं. क्यों कर रहा हूँ मैं? They need to be told. You have this hunger, you have this question. You don't understand why anything should be done the way we tell you to do it. Spiritual literacy, you need to have your purpose, right? Sales literacy. Those of you who did my class already know this, but there's a big shift in how value is created, where value is created, into constructing and crafting meaningful narratives. We just don't have the art of doing that anymore. And finally, of course, software literacy. There's too many tools, too many technologies, there's too much going on, too much of everything. So all these exponential technologies, we've barely caught up with the latest version of whatever doodad they've put out. अगले हफ्ते you get another headline, वो चाइना से आया, वो वाला तो जी बहुत पुराना हो गया. We're like, it's a week old, man. And this new thing is even better. And you try to learn the new thing. Next week there's another new thing, and you're like, अरे यार बहुत हो गया. You see what's going on? We're just tired of all this change because we can't make up with it. And so technical skills, we're feeling there's diminishing returns. Coding सीख लोगे, but AI can do it better. Spreadsheeting सीख लोगे, AI can do it better. Writing सीख लोगे, AI can do it better. What the heck do I do? And so what's happening is technology can do so much. This is the old meme that a lot of students have. Life is capable of doing this, but we do this. Because technology already can do this, but we're happy doing this only. हो गया, अब इतना ही कर सकते हैं. We're just tired of keeping up with technology because it's moving too fast. And therefore we are, to finish this thing, we are functionally illiterate, even with software. So I'd like to tell you that the 4 literacies are essential because they're an essential foundation of the society that we're about to enter. And we have alarmingly sleepwalked into a state of functional illiteracy on all 4 of them. With that, my time is up. Questions, comments?
Do you think the acceleration of technology is going to slow because we are feeling that exhaustion and this chronic dissatisfaction? Is it going to slow, or we need to culturally base ourselves so that we adapt to it better?
It will slow down. Technology can always go faster, but it will slow down because our ability to digest it and process it has gone away. That's one. The other is the Bhasmasur problem. My sense is that society, as a civilization, as a construct, it does not have any glue. So it's like a sand mountain. It collapses under its own weight. So societies will eventually build up a whole bunch of culture, a whole bunch of technology, and then they collapse under their own weight. And then we think, बनाया कैसे था? हमें तो पता ही नहीं. Because they have collapsed under their own weight. Why? Because our cultural systems have not kept up with all the technology and so on. So my sense is that we'll either collapse as a society under our own weight, or we'll figure out how to master the technology. But I'll give it your generation. Another 20 years, you'll have a tremendous volume of change. But it has already outpaced our ability to absorb it. So then it'll be limiting our ability to create new technology because we don't know what to do with it. No money will go into it because what do you do with it? I mean, it's like the phone thing, right? Now, previously a new phone came out and you'd be like, okay, can I buy the new phone? And now you're like, new phone आ गया, एक और उन्होंने कैमरा डाल दिया, like हो गया ना, 3 कैमरे काफी हैं इसमें. I don't need more lenses on the damn phone. हो गया. It's asymptotic because we can't handle any more technology. It's not interesting anymore to us. And so that's happening with a lot of technology as well. We just don't know how to use it. And so now we have to absorb new use cases, change the society to create new types of value. Then we'll have consumed all the technology and then we'll have to reinvest into it. So I think this is a pulsating problem of breathing in and out. Yes?
Do you think this is a generational issue? Because the digital age has begun for 20 years. Like, I think ours is the only generation which is born in the era of smartphones and laptops. So, like, do you think these problems will get solved as more generations are born at this age and they know how to cope with them, how to cope with shifting social values?
Yeah, that's always the case. In the future, we'll have figured it out. We're going through this liminal stage where we were somewhat illiterate for some time and then eventually we'll catch up. I'm doing this talk because I'd like to accelerate that, our response to the illiteracy. That's the reason I'm building up my thesis overall. That it's important and it needs to be done every now and then. And it's time. Because your age, you are very literate on the software side, but you're even more illiterate than I am on every other cue. So you're going to have a lot of things to catch up on. You'll run into the real world when you do, and then you'll realize meaning नहीं है, purpose नहीं है, मन नहीं कर रहा है, लोगों से बात नहीं करने का मन कर रहा है, कुछ हो नहीं रहा है, and then you have to go through the school of hard knocks and learn that all that you learned was probably not enough.
Will these problems increase with every generation, or will these also?
No, some problems will increase, some will decrease, but your generation is going to feel the most impact of this because हमारा तो time चला गया. We are post-peak. I am post-peak, right? But you're pre-peak. But you're peaking at a time when you have a lot of absorption pressure. You have to handle all the technology and develop this intuition, develop this purpose, develop this connection, and so on. So you have to adapt really quickly to everything that you've missed. We had some ability to interact with people. We had some time to build up our spiritual literacy. You don't have that. So you probably have it worse than we did.
I think 9 to 5 job is kind of looked at as something very monotonous and boring. But we all know that not all of us can go on to become businessmen or entrepreneurs. So how do we find a sense of purpose in our 9 to 5? Like, I think that's something I would like to know.
Yeah. This is a very important question. When you come to the 6:30, if you do, that's going to be very important, because finding purpose, your individual purpose, we just don't teach people how to find their purpose. And what it leads to is burnout. It leads to this allergy for the workplace, for your colleagues, for just the monotony and the boredom and the politics and the elbowing in the workplace. But finding your purpose is teachable.
So you'll cover that in the 6:30 session.
Some of that, I will cover that. Yes?
But there's also because society is evolving and what we see as important and necessary is also evolving. Because when this delivery, delivery technology came around these institutions, like Amazon, people argue that you can't replace human touch. That's something which is against the idea of deliveries. But nowadays, our generation doesn't feel like human touch is necessary. In fact, some people think it's the reason why Amazon is successful, because people don't want to engage with other people, retailers.
Yeah. That, if you heard of the Una bomber, have you heard of the Una bomber? Very famous American story. This guy, 170 IQ, like super smart guy, Berkeley PhD, taught at Berkeley, like super smart. Yeah. He arrived at the conclusion that technology is terrible. And it's creating a society which is terrible, and he must stop it. And what he started doing was he started sending parcel bombs to universities and airports. UNA, Universities and Airport Bomber. So he was called the Unabomber. He started shipping bombs, and he was trying to bring down. He wrote a very powerful manifesto, again 170 IQ. So he wrote a very compelling. The whole point is that he thought that technology was a problem. So the thing is, you think that human contact. I agree with you that you go to a bank and you never want to see a banker. You just want the money. In fact, you don't even want the money. Bank क्या होता है? You don't care for the bank. And धीरे धीरे अब शॉपकीपर से भी बात नहीं करना, वो डिलीवर कर देगा. Blinkit कर दो, Zepto कर दो, Dunzo कर दो, whatever. The point is, we're coming to that, but you'll realize that this studio rat situation where you're being fed things, you're pressing buttons and you're being fed things, right? It's not satisfying after a while because it's not enough challenge for you. Have you been to zoos in the last few years? When was the last time you went to a zoo? Maybe 10 years, 15 years ago? Do you remember the bear encounter? The bear जहाँ पर होते हैं, भालू होते हैं. भालू सिर्फ भालू होता है कि वहाँ पर वो कुछ खिलौने रखे होते हैं, कुछ ड्रम्स रखे होते हैं, बॉल रखी होती है. Bears are very intelligent creatures. You have to leave a puzzle in there for them to use their brain. Otherwise, they go crazy. Right? Your brains are thousands of times stronger than the bear. You don't have a problem, you'll find a problem. Or you'll find a belt with a bomb on it. Because bande ko purpose chahiye. If you watch the movie Fight Club, what was it about? Again, purpose. You take on a purpose because you hate a life without purpose. And so you will agree to whatever diabolical philosophy someone is willing to teach you because it gives you purpose. It doesn't give you a long life, but gives you purpose and meaning. You count for something, right? And that's the danger of being in this asocial, antisocial environment. We're essentially a social species. We're successful because we're a social species. You missed the first half where I begin with the cave paintings. We've always been a social species. And to lose that is to lose what makes us human. Yes?
To comment on that, we are all the time interacting with tools and technologies that basically engineers who like to spend time alone, they made it.
Yeah.
So that they can optimize things so that I don't need to talk to other people.
Yeah.
And we are using all these technologies most of our day. And that's why we are becoming like them.
Yes.
Because we are using all the technologies that engineers optimized for me time.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, very good. Avoiding other people, getting pizza delivered. We've become nerd culture because nerds are dominating the culture. The leading exporter. I live in nerdland. It is a hegemonical exporter of culture. I live in San Francisco, so it's the leading export of cultural ideas. New age also, but also technological and economic ideas. And so you're all living nerd life.
In this situation when the social fabric is dying down, what can we, like specifically a few attempts perhaps, what can we do to still make our way in the social fabric and also try to do our part in replacing it?
Yeah. Learn to connect with people. I run a whole institute just teaching this connection. How to connect with people, how to actually connect with people in a place where we are restoring the social fabric. Just talk to people and connect with people authentically. Bina purpose ki. Just talk to people. Chris Ford karo. You don't know what Chris Ford is, but just talk to random people. You're walking, sitting in a train. Bagla koi kitab padh raha hai. Kya padh rahe? Kyun padh rahe ho? Kya chal raha hai? What have you done? Just be curious about people. You'll have more fun. You'll actually enjoy the journey a lot more. Alright, our time is up. I wanted to provoke with this talk, so I hope I have provoked you enough. Obviously it's a thought in progress. So any comments that you have, any pushback that you have, I'd love to hear it because it helps me shape the ideas further. And I'll continue giving this talk until I've figured out what I'm trying to say. With that, you've been a very patient audience. Thank you very much. See you at the 6:30 if you're coming. Bye-bye.